In this video, we're going to be talking about treatments that can make eczema worse. Now, in today's agenda, we're going to cover the 3 most common treatments for eczema, my personal experience with these treatments, and my personal story with eczema, why most treatments for eczema fail in the long term, risks with common treatments that your pharmacologist doesn't know about, and what to do instead in order to heal naturally. So, for those of you that don't know my story, when I was around 5 years old, I had a pretty bad case of eczema. My mom would take me to the doctor. They'd prescribe me some creams. I also had warts. Over time, it started to go away a little bit, and it would present itself when I was in high school. I played water sports, water polo. So for the most part, the disease was pretty controllable. And then I became a nurse. I went to school. I studied for 5 years, became a nurse, and within that time period of 2 years working in the intensive care unit, I started to get really bad symptoms, worse than before. And it started on my eyelids, and then it, as you can see in this photo here, it started moving all the way down my face, created this really weird rash down my neck, down my chest, started going down my legs, all over my arms. And I was absolutely miserable. I was working in the hospital with all these doctors and nurses, and nobody could give me any answers. And I really just started to ask questions about why does nobody have answers for how to fix this thing. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about the things that I was given that were actually not the right answer for me to actually be able to heal this thing naturally. It's been 5 years since I dealt with a case like this. I've been eczema free since then. I know my body very well now. And in this video, I'm going to help walk you through how you can transition into a mode of relying on a bunch of things to being able to heal yourself. So, common treatment number 1. This first type of medication is like first line of defense for the beginning stages of eczema. And what usually ends up happening is these pharmacological drugs get stacked on top of each other. So what will happen is a pharmacist or a doctor will give you something that I'm about to tell you about. And then when that stops working, they just start stacking more and more on top of each other. So my personal experience with this, it was very interesting because when I was younger, my mom took care of everything. But when I got older and I became a nurse and I understood pharmacology, I was given certain medications again. And the pharmacist never told me anything bad about the medications. So they'd give them to me and we'd talk a little bit about like what to do, what to not do. And the interesting thing was I had to put it above my eyes right here in order to knock it back. They never told me that the medications they were giving me would decrease the skin turgor, which means the elasticity of my skin. It decreased it, so it made it more saggy and droopy. And there's no way for me to be able to fix that now. And so the point that I want to make here is sometimes people in the industry will give you information, but they won't give you everything. And a lot of times, a lot of these people, because I went through this myself, I was a nurse. The first week of school, they gave us a pharmacological textbook. And we studied all of the things that the pharmacological drug did, but we did not necessarily get taught all of the potential risks and side effects. Oftentimes the risks and side effects are brushed off like, oh, only 5% or 10% of the population will have that issue happen to them. And a lot of times pharmacologists will not know all of the risks and bad things can happen. So if you could take a guess of what this drug is, you're probably on it now if you've had a severe case of eczema. Corticosteroid creams. So corticosteroid creams essentially are targeting your part in the body that is responsible for aiding in the immune system. So your kidneys have 2 glands on top of them. You have 2 kidneys in your body, left and right. On top of them, you have adrenal glands. You have the adrenal medulla, which is the inside of the adrenal gland, and you have the adrenal cortex, which is the outside. The adrenal medulla is responsible for releasing norepinephrine, epinephrine. The cortex is responsible for cortisol. So what these drugs do, like hydrocortisone, for example, is they target the body's ability to fluctuate the immune system. And essentially what they do is they will take away the itch or the redness for people. But what ends up happening is people can develop over time something called topical steroid withdrawal. If you look at this photo here, with my eyes all puffy, that was topical steroid withdrawal. Nobody that I saw was able to tell me that this was topical steroid withdrawal. A lot of the medical practitioners that I talked to at the time didn't even know what topical steroid withdrawal was. And there are many people who will also say it does not exist. But if you look at this photo of this woman in the middle, this is someone who was on steroid creams for a very long time, and she came off of them, and this is how her body reacted. And so what's really important to understand is when you're taking these creams, you put them on your body, they get absorbed in through the skin, and then they go and they affect the adrenal glands. And what ends up happening is over time, your doctor will end up prescribing you. Like if you look at this photo on the left, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 creams right there. And so people will get prescribed all these creams because the first one will work for a little bit, but if you keep using it, your adrenal glands start turning off and your body becomes reliant on the cream. And then you have to use more and more and more over time. And when you use more and more and more over time, your body now needs something else to work. So then you have to switch to another cream or add another one. And I've seen people who have had tons of different creams that they've had to stack on top of each other. And the real issue is when they get to the point where creams don't work anymore and they still have the symptoms, and then they have to come off all the creams. If you get to this point, it's really bad. Because once you have to come off all the creams and you've been using them for years, your adrenal glands are not going to function properly because it's been getting something exogenously from the outside world, and the body has turned that off because it's like, oh, well, we don't need to produce these hormones for ourselves because we're getting it for free somewhere else. But anytime you get something for free, there is a cost. And this is where people can develop really bad symptoms, aka topical steroid withdrawal. So if you're in the phase of topical steroid withdrawal or you've been on the creams for a long time, no worries. Like there are very severe cases of people who have been able to recover. If you get to the point of topical steroid withdrawal, it is a longer healing process. It is going to take much longer because you got to get your body back into natural rhythm, and it's very painful as well. For me, my eyes really presented with topical steroid withdrawal, and I had other symptoms all over my chest and stuff. But the trick is to catch this sooner rather than later. You do not want to be taking these creams your whole life. And most people in the medical industry are not going to tell you that this can cause massive issues. Common treatment number 2. So this medication is usually second line defense if the corticosteroid creams aren't working. When I worked in the ICU at the first hospital I worked at, there was a doctor named Dr. Delahari. And he was an Indian man. He was pretty cool, pretty I don't even know the word, just like high energy guy. And one day I walk in and I say, Dr. Delahari, my eyes have eczema up here. I've had eczema since XYZ when I was 5 years old. Now this is how I'm presenting. I told him my whole story. And he goes, oh, easy, as he's walking out the door. He goes, just take this medication. So he writes me a prescription. I get on this other cream. It's a different class of medication. And it worked until it didn't anymore. So if you guys want, try and take a guess at what this one is. These are immunosuppressants. So the specific one that I was given is called Elidel. And the way it works is it inhibits T cell activation by blocking the transcription of early cytokines. You don't need to know what any of this means. Essentially what it's saying is it's going to block inflammation that's caused by an autoimmune response. Okay. So the interesting thing about when I started taking Elidel, not a lot of people knew about it. He was one of the doctors that did know about it. Started taking it. It started working well. And then it got to a point where my symptoms, I noticed, every time I take this cream, it goes away, but I can never get rid of the disease. And so I started asking questions. I was like, this isn't how the human body should work. The human body knows how to regulate itself to the point where it doesn't have disease. A healthy person doesn't need to take products their whole entire life. So I started asking deeper and deeper questions. And what I realized was that the corticosteroids and Elidel and the next medication I'm about to describe to you were actually covering the root cause. They were, if you look at this little tree in this picture, the eczema and the skin disease that you may have is a symptom. And what you want to actually find is the root cause. If you look down at the bottom of the tree, the causes are beneath the ground, right? So you have to actually dig very deep to find what the root cause is. And so for me, this took me quitting my job, moving abroad, and going on a hero's journey to identify how to heal the body properly without needing to buy and use products for the rest of my life. And I'm very happy to say I figured out those answers. So this was the second line of treatment I was given, and luckily I got off of it. The number one thing I wish I had when I was going through skin disease and eczema was a community of people who had already figured out the problem, who could guide me through the steps and the processes needed in order to heal myself naturally. And lucky for you, if you are interested in a community like this, we actually have a school community where you can come in and learn education related to skin disease for a fraction of the price of what you're going to be paying doctors and all different types of practitioners in the future. So you can learn for yourself, heal for yourself, and be able to feel better a lot quicker without having to take pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life. So if you're interested in that, click on the description below and I will see you in the community. The third and not as common treatment is one that a lot of people turn to. You could go to forums, you could read all about it. There are all these people online, Facebook communities on Reddit that are talking about this specific drug. And the unfortunate part about a lot of the people who talk about this, I do think it's beneficial because it does help people, but they're not addressing the root cause. And so what ends up happening is a lot of these people, they end up getting on this drug. They take it for a very long time and then they end up getting sicker. And they think it's a end-all be-all because they just want to be done with their eczema. It's super painful, right? So this is usually a last resort. My experience with this, I took this right before I left to move to Colombia. I ended up getting the doctors to prescribe me this drug. I had to fight tooth and nail with them to get it for me. And the reason being is because this drug is very expensive. And insurance companies usually don't want to pay for expensive drugs, even though you're paying them every month. So I got this prescribed. It had to be put in the fridge. I got my first dose of it. And then 2 weeks later, I had the other medication and I took it again. And I'll tell you on the next slide what I thought of it. But I will also tell you the clients that we work with here at the Skin Savers. One of my clients in the past actually had a very terrible experience with this drug, and the pharmacist didn't tell him anything about this. He ended up getting corneal tears in his eyes, which is a symptom that can occur. And there's a lot of people who have reported issues with their eyes. So if you could take a guess of this drug, you will get a gold star. It is Dupixent, and Dupixent is a monoclonal antibody. So what this does is it binds to the interleukin-4 receptor, blocking interleukin-4 and interleukin-13, which is intracellular signaling. So essentially, this is working directly on the immune system as well. But this drug is, from what I've seen, one, really hard to get. It's expensive. I think insurance companies pay like $5,000 per injection. It usually comes in a box of 2. And it works for 2 weeks. So when I took it, I took the first injection, my eczema went away almost completely. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But then there was a thought in my mind of like, okay, well, it worked, but is it going to continue to work? And then after 2 weeks, my eczema came back. And so I'm like, okay, got to take another injection. And luckily for me, I was in Colombia and I had just left the US. There was no way for me to get this drug anymore. And I'm like, I'm not going to take this for the rest of my life. So I came off of it. And then that's when I started finding more and more stories from people having issues like conjunctivitis and corneal tears. And there's probably even more symptoms that are associated with this. But the big issue that I want to convey to you guys is when you are taking these medications, you have to know that it's doing something in the body, and there will always be another side effect. So when you take a medication, it might get rid of the symptom you don't like, but it will often cause another symptom. There are many drugs that people take, pills. It might help with like blood pressure issues, but it will also cause issues with the liver. So you have to always keep in mind that our bodies are one system. And anytime you're taking something that's not natural, sometimes it can work, but if you're on it for the rest of your life, you have to usually look deeper at the root cause. So in summary, the three types of medications most commonly prescribed, you have your corticosteroids, you have immunomodulators, and then you have monoclonal antibodies like Dupixent. A reminder, covering up the problem isn't going to work long term. So if you guys are serious about actually figuring out how to heal yourself naturally, it's really important to go deep and to learn from someone who has done this before. And this is all about finding the root cause. This is the way that you are going to heal yourself. If you want to continue to cover up the symptoms and just keep going on with the way that your life is now, that's okay. But just know there will be likely consequences that go with that. And I'm not here to fearmonger or anything. I'm just here to let people know and educate you guys to the best of your ability, or my ability, so that those who do want to go the route that's a lot safer for them in the long term, and will teach them how to take care of their bodies, you do have that option. And one of the biggest root causes that we see with clients is actually related to food and food sensitivity. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I highly recommend clicking on the next video, which will walk you through the 7 most common foods that cause issues for the clients we work with. Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.